it was the bit that we were all waiting for yesterday, this summit, this meeting between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. And probably, I mean, it's a good start, I think, for Starmer. It's all gone kind of to plan. Quick word from you, then we're going to go to Louisa in a second.
Amazingly, from a government that's sort of been lurching from crisis to crisis, he's had a good time in the US in a really tricky spot.
Yeah. Labour will be very happy this morning, I would have thought, Karen.
I think I'd be delighted. The Starmer-Charmer offensive seems to have worked. And, you know, Macron had a good meeting with Trump, but he didn't come away with some of the promises or assurances that Starmer got from his meeting with Trump.
Well, let's go to our political correspondent, shall we, Louisa James, in Washington, who was there in the Oval Office. Louisa, first of all, what was the atmosphere like? I'm sure everybody was reading the body language and wondering what expressions said what. So talk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it was a pretty surreal experience being in that room, having seen it so many times on television, basically, for many historic moments. And as we were lining up to go in, there was definitely a feeling of nervous tension and, let's face it, excitement from journalists, because we all had the feeling that really anything could happen. We've spoken a lot about how unpredictable Donald Trump can be, and one of the ways he sort of upended the way things go at the White House, throwing the rule book out the window, is just in the choreography of these things. So usually with previous presidents in the Oval Office, when they let the journalists in, they only stay for a couple of minutes and they maybe take one or two questions. President Trump, since he's been in the office this time, has been letting those moments go on for much, much longer. He probably took about a dozen questions from various people in there yesterday, and that, of course, was going to be the moment of danger for Keir Starmer, because we journalists, it's our job to ask difficult questions. It's our job to be disruptors. There was a clear decision, though, I think, on behalf of both men to be very, very nice to each other, to fawn over each other, and any tension was quickly diffused when Keir Starmer played his trump card and produced that letter. And then I think you could see his body language changing after that, and he visibly relaxed. And Keir Starmer was even, I noticed, talking Donald Trump's language, saying words like terrific, which brings me to the point where I managed to get a question in. That was a feat in itself, because it's a matter of trying to catch Donald Trump's eye amid all the people in that room. But you can see what happened when I tried to ask him what I hoped was a difficult question, tried to get him to talk about an area of disagreement between the two, and he effectively didn't answer.
You talked about having common ground with Keir Starmer, but there are things you disagree on as well. You described Zelensky as a dictator. He describes President Putin as a dictator. Do you see that as a problem?
The relationship between President Zelensky and President Putin is not a good one. You've noticed, right? It's not a good one. It's not a good relationship. And we're going to have to try and work something out. Sometimes that happens. I get along with both. I have a very good relationship with President Putin. I think I have a very good relationship with President Zelensky. And now we're doing the deal, and we're going to be in there. We're going to be actually in there, digging our hearts out. And hopefully, we need the rare earth, and we have some here, but we don't have enough. Our economy is very strong, and we need a lot of things that, in some cases, we don't have here. So I think we're going to have a very good relationship, but the relationship between them is not the best.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Fascinating, isn't it, Louisa? A classic Trump moment there, where he seems to either convince himself, certainly convinced others, that he didn't, in fact, tweet that President Zelensky was a dictator.
Yeah, and speaking to some of the US journalists who were there, they said that that is a very familiar tactic from Donald Trump, that if he doesn't want to answer the question, he answers another one and then makes you feel like you shouldn't have asked it in the first place because it was a stupid question, because it was nothing to do with him anyway. So I think, some of us had quite a characteristic experience, characteristic Donald Trump experience in the Oval Office.
Louisa, thanks very much for joining us, and sterling work out there in Washington. Just that point, though, about the dictator, there is something in that, and this is the point with Donald Trump. He may well have said all these lovely things at this press conference yesterday. He may well have mentioned a trade deal but we know he doesn't keep his word, and we know he can change like the wind. So last week, he clearly told the world Zelensky was a dictator when it suited him, when he was trying to get Putin on side, and now he's changing his tune. Who's to say he won't change his tune on Starmer and Britain in the future, Selma?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And also, I think we've had previous experience of this when Theresa May was kind of like the first person, the first foreign leader during his first term to go out there. And then, you know, relations deteriorated between us. There is a logic, though, to what President Trump is doing in that prior to today, where Zelensky is going out to Washington, there was no agreement on the rare earth minerals that the US was trying to extract from Ukraine in order to be this broker in the war. That is a significant thing that has changed, and therefore Trump has now changed his position. So there is a logic that follows. It's just not what we expect from our world leaders, which is what we need is consistency.
Just in case people weren't glued to the entire press conference as we journalists and commentators were, should we just have a look at some of those key moments? Because it seemed to me he was wearing two hats. He was wearing the hat of a British Prime Minister wanting to secure the tariffs and all those things that we want. And alongside that, which is, of course, also in British interest, wearing the hat of European leaders to try and get some commitment of a backup to any future peace deal, militarily-wise, from America. So it was a whirlwind of compliments. So let's look at the first one, where Donald Trump is complimenting the Prime Minister, both on his accent and also his negotiating tactics.
And we look forward to welcome you in the United Kingdom. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful accent. I would have been president 20 years ago if I had that accent.
Thank you very much.
Did our Prime Minister persuade you not to put tariffs on the UK?
He tried. He was working hard, I'll tell you that. He earned whatever the hell they pay him over there. Prime Minister Starmer, you've been terrific in our discussions. You're a very tough negotiator, however. I'm not sure I like that, but that's okay.
So Keir Starmer, on that element, seems to have won through. A promise of a trade deal which would negate, the implication is, from Donald Trump, the need to raise the tariffs that have been imposed on Canada and Mexico and implied about 25%, isn't it, I think, for the European Union as well. So that seems like a success, although that could take years to deliver and less commitment in terms of the military backup.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is quite incredible, actually. Even, I mean, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were really talking openly about a trade deal, and many former prime ministers have tried that. It wasn't successful under Barack Obama. Boris Johnson hoped he could get it. You know, talking in this very public way and open way about that suggests that there's been a lot of work going on.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that obviously the balance of trade between the US and the UK is far more balanced from an American point of view than it is with their relationship with other countries. So I think that's really interesting. And I think also Keir Starmer in the press conference later referenced joint work around tech as well, and that working with the US on that.
But that's the tricky one. So no, we're saying that it's going to be, like, the reason everybody fails to get a trade deal with America, especially when you're the UK and not in the EU, is because they could absolutely swallow us whole. So we could do a trade deal with them tomorrow, but what's the quality of that deal, right? And it's interesting that you mentioned tech, because in the Oval Office, before they did the press conference, Trump started talking about the EU and the way that they treat US tech companies. Now, we've just had the Online Safety Act go through here. We know that there are a lot of tech behemoths in the US that do not like what we have done. So even though it's enacted, it still needs to be consulted on and implemented. Are we saying that that could be at risk? So the devil is in the detail. The hand-wringing is fantastic. It's great that, you know, we can send an invitation from the king and we get a nice reception.
Yeah, but you know,
the devil is in the detail.
We've just got where he's talking, where the Prime Minister's talking about AI. Do you want to have a quick look at that?
Yeah.
In case people haven't seen it at home, let's have a look. Yes, we do. The director's asking me, by the way. I haven't gone mad talking to myself. It's the one that begins, we've decided today to go further, if that's any help.
I think we've got
coming.
it. It's coming.
It's coming. Bear with us. I mean, the trade deal might have arrived by the time we get this. Let's have a quick look.
We've decided today to go further to begin work on a new economic deal with advanced technology at its core. Look, our two nations together shaped the great technological innovations of the last century. We have a chance now to do the same for the 21st century.
I think we'll have two deals. I think we'll have a deal on ending the war, and I think we're going to end up with a great trade deal with you. And it's an honor to be with you, and I want to thank everybody very much.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think that, you know, there's clearly been active talks. That just didn't come out of the session today. There's been behind the scenes talking about these issues. But I think, you know, look, I think we're entering spring and there seems to be some green shoots coming. And it would be absolutely...
You didn't say green shoots.
I'm saying it. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there. Look.
Why is it controversial? People might understand because as soon as you say green shoots, they drop dead.
Yes, but also it's what Norman Lamont said famously in response to a journalist just before the economy collapsed. Caroline, you know that's, oh my God, everybody pray.
We're in another era, and we're certainly in another era with President Trump. But look, I think, you know, Starmer has, you know, done himself proud and the country proud. I don't think anybody thought the expectations on this would be so positive coming out of this discussion. And I think as a warm-up act, actually, as well, for today's meeting with Zelensky, and I'm sure behind the scenes, Starmer's people are talking to Zelensky's people about how to handle his meeting today.
Let's talk about that Trump card then. I mean, you know, it was a moment. It was a key moment. I think it took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, all the pre-analysis, I don't think I heard anyone predict this one, that this is what Starmer could pull out the bag. Let's take a look when Starmer took out a letter from the King.
Well, that is really nice. I must make sure his signature's on that. Otherwise, it's not quite as meaningful. It is, and that's quite a signature, isn't it? Beautiful. He's a beautiful man, a wonderful man.
This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented. And I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. What I haven't got yet is your answer. I do need to...
The answer is yes.
I thought it was really interesting, and I think Starmer had really thought this one through and been advised about, you know, there's moments where you can fawn, there's moments where you've got to be professional. I thought that was the one moment he was fawning a little bit. I mean, he really hammered that home. This is unprecedented. The hand on the shoulder. There was a lot going on there. But it kind of helped. I mean, it's exactly what Trump wants. And the fact that Trump said, is it signed, is exactly the kind of thing that appeals to him.
Yeah, it was before they even got down to the talks. And so it was Starmer's opening gambit, and he played it well. And producing the letter... I mean, just the conversation. Even Trump was probably maybe aware he was going to get it, but it seemed like a surprise, didn't it? And it set the tone for everything else. And, you know, our royal family, when it comes to these, you know, big moments and opportunities, they really pull it out the hat. We have the King of Hearts winning the heart of the President of the United States of America.
But it does beg the question, and we will put it to Wes Streeting later, we are rolling out the red carpet in a state visit to a man who's accused of some serious sexual offences. He's pardoned 1,500 people who were involved in the January 6 attack on Congress. He's got suspending refugee admissions to his own country, pulled out of the World Health Organization, that hideous video regarding Gaza. I mean, it's non-stop with this guy, but yet we're rolling out the red carpet. What does that say about our own character and our own values?
So... I understand that, and I think there are a lot of people who will view that fawning of the Prime Minister as slightly distasteful. I feel uncomfortable about it. I felt uncomfortable about it when we all rushed to go and be at Trump's side in 2017, because there are serious questions about the way that he conducts his politics. And I'd go a step further outside of the values and principles that you've just outlined. There are real things at stake here. The US voted against us and with our enemies at the UN for the first time, aligned with Russia. So this is a really precarious time for our relationship with the US. So there is an argument to suggest that actually we need to hug them closer and pull them tighter in order to secure the certainty and the peace that we've had for the last 50 or so years.
Well, almost take the approach that you cannot change Donald Trump. So you might as well work with them,
but also
in the best way we can.
Yeah. But also, he says these things around Zelensky being a dictator. He says a lot of things, doesn't he? Puts up that video that well, I don't know if someone made it as a joke and then he thought he would try and own the joke against him or whatever in relation to Gaza. But I think what we're beginning to understand that this disruptive behaviour, these words that he uses, they're not always the last word. And I think for, you know, any leader that wants to work with the United States, they have to bear in mind what we need in our interests as a country and to influence.
But we do have to be so phony about it.
But, you know, I think that's because we're sort of, there's a sort of, we're in terms of Britishness, that's not the way we do things. But Trump doesn't do the way we do things. So sometimes you have to have some of that. Macron did the same.
But you talk about that video, and then you think, well, what will British Palestinians be thinking?
Of course.
You know, what will Ukrainians be thinking? You know, we invited 200,000 Ukrainians over here, and now we're inviting a man, rolling out the red carpet, the man who supports Putin, who might pull some of their family.
But the thing today is that President Zelensky, it sounds like, is going to strike a deal. I thought what was interesting about the talk about the backstop and what military support would be there. Starmer was very clear that we're ready to put troops on the ground in Ukraine and provide air cover as well. But one of the interesting things that President Trump did say was, he said, with this deal, we're going to have Americans digging in Ukraine. That means they're going to be out there working. And in some ways, there was a sort of, seemed to me, an implicit indication. He's saying to Russia, don't come and do anything in Ukraine when we've got Americans out there working to get these rare earth minerals out of the ground. And I thought that was really interesting. They're in for the long haul through a deal. And China's been doing this in Africa for a long time, working with those countries to get access to their rare earth minerals as well.
It's not the
so
same,
let's see.
But it's not the same thing, though. The way that China's been having its diplomacy has been over several decades and not in this crisis situation. And honestly, it's not enough of a guarantee to have private citizens in another country without a military backstop. That's the thing that Russia would be afraid of.
But that's why Starmer, this week as well, timing is everything. His announcement that he was going to make a choice around raising our defence spending to 2.5% and actually cutting the aid budget was a big deal for him to do as a Labour Prime Minister.
And
that was a strong message that he means business, and that's the message he was sending to Trump.
Well, look, we're going to put all of this to Wes Streeting, the Health Minister, later, and we'll get your reaction to that. Let's move on to something else, which is great news, actually. Dr. Ahmed, sometimes you can be here on this table and it's kind of bleak, but you're very excited by this. So the government has agreed, in principle, a new contract with GPs that will essentially allow for more appointments. So many of us, I mean, me included, have been trying to get an appointment with my GP. You've got to call at 8 o'clock, and sometimes you can't because you're not around at 8 o'clock to make the call, or you just don't get through, and that's it. And you've got to keep trying every day. Now they're saying there'll be more appointments available online. That sounds like a good thing.
It does sound like a good thing, and I am actually quite positive about this, which is a change for me. So we've got an injection.
Can you explain exactly how the thing should work?
So there's an injection of cash into primary care because we've had a real terms funding cut compared to the rest of the NHS. So about 889 million going into primary care, which is a large sum of money, which brings us up a little bit closer to where we should be. And the kind of things that are attached to this are that we can actually employ more GPs and practice nurses with funding that has been previously ring-fenced for other people like physicians associates, paramedics. But sometimes, as good as those people are, sometimes patients just need to see a GP or a nurse with that depth and breadth of knowledge. So there'll be more, hopefully more GPs in primary care. The other thing is this 8 a.m. scramble that you referred to. So lots of people rushing to make an appointment first thing in the morning before all the appointment goes. From the 1st of October, as part of this negotiation, people will be able to submit requests for non-urgent appointments, routine appointments, medication requests, admin, through online tools during all the opening hours.
Is that like the NHS app, for example?
Very similar.
Because when I go on the NHS app now and I try to get an appointment with my doctor, it says your surgery isn't taking online appointments. Yeah. So that would change, would it?
That would change. They may have their own system in doing it. It may not be the NHS
Might
app.
direct me to their website or something.
So, but that will be within core GP hours, so not just first thing in the morning.
Right.
And the other thing, which I think is really good, particularly as a GP, vulnerable patients, so people who are older adults, young children, pregnant women, those with chronic illnesses, will have a named GP that they will see each time they need to see a doctor. So that continuity of care for those high-risk, vulnerable, complex patients will be there, which will mean, hopefully, they won't need to keep coming back to the doctor.
And just to clarify, for those people, vulnerable, the elderly, that can't go online or, you know, have difficulty with online, they'll still be able to call.
They'll still be able to call. They'll still be able to come into the surgery.
Right.
This isn't the end of the negotiation. We still need a new contract with the government, and that is still in talks. But this is a really positive
And do we have an idea of how many GPs will benefit from this? Is it going to be all GP practices, do you think, or a large percentage?
It's whoever signs up to it, really.
Oh, OK.
So I think so. But the other thing, I mean, part of this is I train GPs. We've currently got GPs who are struggling to find work because we didn't have the funding to employ them. So now that will be better for them, and that will be better for patients as well.
Thank you, Delby. And it was a very special time at the moment, isn't it, for Muslims? And you did something very special for it last night.
I did, yes. Me being a very practising Muslim. No, not all the time. But anyway, yes, I went to Leicester Square in London and helped turn on the Ramadan lights. For a lot of Muslims, they'll be fasting, starts tonight, in fact, for 30 days. And I was there with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and Yasser from Capital Radio. And it was fantastic. And they look amazing. It was just so lovely.
They're very beautiful.
Yeah, they really are. It's on Coventry Street, just off Leicester Square. And actually, and I said at the time, I thought, you know, we just need to come together as people, and it was just so lovely. There was people from all walks of life, not just Muslims. There was tourists, non-Muslims, everybody there, and it was just one of those moments where we're just reconnect with humanity again, and I thought it was quite lovely.
My goodness, long may that last.
Yeah.
Well, you know, wonderful for everyone.
It was lovely, yeah, exactly. Salma, are you going to be fasting?
I only managed 9 last year, so I'm hoping I'm going to do a few more.
Oh, OK, very good, yeah.
It's more of a diet regime, though.
Whatever the motivation.
The serious practicing Muslims will be so proud of you both this morning. Goodness me.
Doing our best.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much indeed.